necessarily reflect those of station staff, management, and advertisers.
Liberalism is back in style. Welcome to the evolution.
What if you knew Fox News was just lying to you? How could you watch when you know?
He was voted Variety Entertainer of the Year at the Excellence in the Arts Award. And is one of the highest Arbitron, now Nielsen-rated talk radio hosts in Las Vegas. He is also a refreshing voice of logic and reason. Live from the entertainment capital of the world, Doug Basham.
And good morning, my fellow wokes and Republican jokes. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Doug Basham, and welcome to the Doug Basham Show right here on KSHP in Las Vegas and on social media, and to a genuine demonstration of excellence in broadcasting. Hey everybody, great to see you all again. I am Doug Basham, your certified card-carrying member in good standing, I might add, of the Enemy Within Brigade, also known as one radical leftist lunatic who needs to be handled by the American military. I welcome you all to day 10 of Morning in America, morning spelled with a U, of course, as those of us who respect our Constitution grieve the loss of our great American experiment in self-governance and democracy, and anxiously await the stroke that will save America and mankind. My website is DougBasham.com, last name spelled B as in Bob, A-S-H-A-M as in mayhem. DougBasham.com, my email, Doug@DougBasham.com. That said, I extend a warm yet melancholy welcome to those of you listening on KSHP, AM 1400 and 107.1 FM on your radio dial here in Las Vegas. We are also broadcasting on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, TikTok, and of course, X. Now, if you go to my website, again, DougBasham.com, you will discover it's all of one page. That's it. At the top, you'll find the show's logo. Underneath, 11 links, most to my social media sites. Also want to contact me via email. That said, the two links I'd like to call your attention to the most are, 1, my YouTube page, and 2, my TikTok page. On my YouTube page, I would respectfully ask you hit the subscribe button. On TikTok, please hit the red follow button. And hey, if you would like to watch the show live and not just listen to it, reason being, when I play clips, I don't play audio clips, I play video clips. Also, because as you can plainly see, this face was made for television. From my website, go to my YouTube, Facebook, or X pages, and if I happen to violate YouTube policies and they suspend my stream mid-show, just go back to my website and then to either my Facebook or X page. 221-7283 is our call-in number here at the station, folks. If you would like to talk on the radio somewhere in our second half hour together, that's area code 702-221-SAVE, as in Save Our Democracy, which we didn't do on Tuesday. And now, on to our broken news for the day. Further to my constant encouragement to Democrats to remember that they are still in power for the next 2 months, instead of just worrying about what Trump is going to do starting in 2 months, I complained a couple days ago that they weren't even writing sternly worded letters anymore. Well, lo and behold, they wrote a sternly worded letter, and we have Matt Jail Bait Gaetz to thank for it. First, just to refresh, and I'm reading from a New York Times piece now, quote, "The Ethics Committee opened an inquiry in 2021 into the sexual misconduct allegations, along with claims that Mr. Gaetz misused state identification records, converted campaign funds to personal use, accepted impermissible gifts under House rules, and shared inappropriate images or videos on the House floor, among other transgressions." Transgressions? Rape is now a transgression? Sex trafficking is a transgression? And we all know that the House Ethics Committee was set to vote on releasing their Gaetz report today. But his abrupt resignation on Wednesday effectively ended the investigation. But what of the report? We await further news on that. The attorney for the then 17-year-old woman said this in a statement, quote, "Mr. Gaetz's likely nomination as Attorney General is a perverse development in a truly dark series of events. We would support the House Ethics Committee immediately releasing the report. She was a high school student and there were witnesses." Witnesses? Oh? In the meantime, let not your hearts be troubled. Senator Dick Durbin is on it. As mentioned, he wrote a sternly worded letter. Quote, "In light of Donald Trump's selection of former Congressman Matt Gaetz to be his Attorney General, I am calling on the House Ethics Committee to preserve and share their report and all relative documentation on Mr. Gaetz with the Senate Judiciary Committee. The sequence and timing of Mr. Gaetz' resignation from the House raises serious questions about the contents of the House Ethics Committee report. We cannot allow this valuable information from a bipartisan investigation to be hidden from the American people. Make no mistake, this information could be relevant to the question of Mr. Gaetz' confirmation as the next Attorney General of the United States and our constitutional responsibility of advice and consent." End quote. Senator Durbin also spoke in the halls of the Senate along with fellow Senator Richard Blumenthal.
"The timing of Mr. Gaetz' resignation from the House raises serious questions about the contents of the House Ethics Committee report. We cannot allow this valuable information from a bipartisan investigation to be hidden from the American people."
I am going to demand release of the Ethics Committee report, all of its findings and recommendations.
Oh, are they finished? Jesus. Someone might want to slip Senator Durbin some no-dos or a can of Red Bull before he wanders out into the hall next time. I must say, they both did an admirable job of containing their anger, didn't they? The question is, why? I mean, they just got shit-canned in the election. They're getting steamrolled every day of the week and twice on Sundays. Trump is helping Gaetz cover up his sex scandals, and they're as calm as can be, even sluggish, lethargic. Why? And how? Democrats, it's okay to get angry. You should be angry. I mean, have you forgotten what righteous anger is?
You tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Yeah, but you see, we're Democrats, so it's more like, I'm writing a letter and heck's coming with me. Oh, wait, do you hear that? Listen real close. Yes, it is the unmistakable sound of Trump publicans just quaking in their boots over those two comments. Oh, and it appears someone leaked something last night. ABC News reported that the woman at the center of the DOJ's probe of Matt Gaetz testified to the House Ethics Committee that Gaetz had sex with her when she was 17 years old. Gaetz and Trump, rapists of a feather, serve together. No wonder Mike Johnson is trying to squash the release of the House Ethics Report. Also, Monterey city officials confirmed last night that 7 years ago, Pete Hegseth, Trump's proposed Secretary of Defense, was named in a Monterey sexual assault probe. That, by the way, was the same year Hegseth had a child with his mistress, who was a married mom of 3, while he was still married to his second wife, whom he'd cheated on his first wife with. Nice! He and Trump can reminisce and trade war stories. Yesterday, we zeroed in on Trump's announcement that he would be nominating Matt Jail Bait Gaetz to be his Attorney General. And before we carry on, let's take a quick look at the Orange Contaminations nominees thus far. The aforementioned Gaetz, Attorney General. Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. Tulsi Gabbard for ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Kristi Noem, Head of Homeland Security. Elise Stefanik, UN Ambassador. John Ratcliffe, CIA. And you know what each of these quote-unquote nominees have in common? Not one of them is even remotely qualified for the position for which they've been nominated. What they do have in common, however, is A, all of them are diehard conspiracy theorists and liars, and B, their complete and undying devotion to Donald Trump. Their embarrassing, cringeworthy, and slavish fawning of and submissiveness to the orange contamination. And you see what he's doing here, right? Exactly what we told you he was going to do. Remaking the government and taking heretofore independent agencies and putting them under his control, out of the White House. As the New York Times put it, quote, Mr. Trump clearly expects the Senate to simply roll over and ignore its responsibilities. He wants to turn the leaders of major important agencies into his deputies, remaking the federal government into a Trump Inc. organization chart entirely subordinate to him, end quote. Hello, this is not only Project 2025, but it's what I called for months the most dangerous part of Project 2025. But who cares, right? Eggs and Doritos cost too much. Something else that remains a distinct possibility and speaks to why Trump has demanded recess appointments. Trying to take complete control of the Senate and every other part of government, of course. That's a given. But also maybe, as much as he knows the abject cowardice of virtually every Republican member of Congress, he also knows that these nominees are so appalling that even his most loyal lickspittles might have a fleeting moment of conscience and sink one or more of his nominees, in which case he just might select someone potentially worse. One phrase that has been used to describe Trump and his nominees thus far is that he is spitting in America's eye. But then, after I finished yesterday's show, what did we learn? Well, first we learned, among other things, if Trump is competing for the Troll of the Year award, he can stop right now. It's a lock. No one else could even come close. Because at precisely 1:14 our time here in Las Vegas, which was an hour and 14 minutes after I finished yesterday's show, we had breaking news. Benedict Donald announced he would be nominating Bobby Brainworms to head Health and Human Services. You know, the anti-vaxxer who says he's not an anti-vaxxer, the dead bear guy, the poster child for marital infidelity, the guy who said gender dysphoria is caused by contaminated water. Are you pooping me? And with this latest choice, forget spitting in America's eye. Donald Trump is dropping trowel, completely emptying both his bladder and bowels, and smearing his filthy waste all over what is, at this point, America's comatose body. Here's Dr. Kavita Patel, former White House medical policy advisor in Barack Obama's administration, her reaction to this broken news.
Oh my God. I mean, those of us who have spent our lifetime, kind of decades working in and around in HHS, I'm not kidding, Nicole, my texts are flying off the chain, both Democrats and Republicans saying, this can't be real. Someone must have gotten this wrong. This can't be possible. And now the second underlying chain, there's some silver linings. The second thought I had is he can't get confirmed, can he? But I'm just listening to you talk about the DNI and all these other roles that require some sort of White House or confirmation or some combination. And here we are. It is really hard to believe. There are career staff texting me saying this was just the push they needed to try to get out. They were already on the fence and worried. We're not just going to see this incredible kind of integration of ideology that has no science behind it. But Nicole, we're going to see probably the best of the best career staff leaving these agencies potentially hollow that he would oversee. Yeah, so the Secretary of Health and Human Services, as you mentioned, has a purview over many agencies that touch our lives. You just touched on a couple of them: Food and Drug Administration, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. You may kind of know these letters as we've talked about all vaccines and things during COVID, but it touches everything. Nicole, it touches our food supply chain. I'll give you an example. When we had a supply chain shortage of baby formula, this hits a lot of people at home because none of the shelves could keep the formula stocked. It's the HHS secretary who kind of pulled it all together and worked with other departments to try to make sure that we could get Americans formula just to feed their children. Add into that just all the research. Think of the National Institutes of Health, Nicole, that's also under HHS. Research on drug development. And I actually pulled up, just to remind myself, a tweet from RFK Jr. when he was running for president, where he said that if he were president, I guess thank goodness he's not, he'd stop research on drug development and infectious diseases for 8 years. And I think he was proud of that. So anything that you do in the medical community, and then let me tell you where it hits home. During COVID, you and I have talked about the Medical Reserve Corps and the Public Health Service Agency, all the people who actually help to facilitate getting vaccines across the country, getting COVID tests across the country, that's under HHS as well. So anything from a safety net clinic to the medicines that you trust are safe, that is now potentially going to be under this environmental lawyer with no training whatsoever and very dangerous views.
Now, that is someone who should be heading Health and Human Services. Bobby Brainworms, not so much. And in all candor, we shouldn't have been surprised. Trump telegraphed this last month at one of his Klandemic rallies.
Robert F. Kennedy cares more about human beings and health and the environment than anybody. And he's going to be absolute. Having him is such a great honor. I've been friends of his for a long time. And I'm going to let him go wild on health. I'm going to let him go wild on the food. I'm going to let him go wild on medicines. The only thing I told him, though, Bobby, you got to do one thing, do whatever you want. You just go ahead, work on the pesticides, work on making women's health. He's so into women's health. And, you know, he's really unbelievable. It's such a passion.
I told him, Bobby, just do whatever you want. Go wild on health. He really sounds concerned about the health of this nation's populace, doesn't he? Go wild, Bobby. Go wild. Not to mention, go wild on health. Fourth graders can formulate better sentences than that. Go wild on health. And they have a better command of the English language. Former CIA director and chief counterterrorism advisor to Barack Obama, John Brennan, he was actually invited to be a guest to comment on the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard to the position of the Director of National Intelligence. But after the Kennedy news broke, he was asked to comment on that.
Well, the people that I've spoken to are just asking the question, what has happened to America? What's going on? putting these institutions, intelligence, justice, health, Homeland Security, defense, in the hands of unqualified, sometimes incompetent, inexperienced people, I think really raises serious concerns among our allies and partners about what's happening inside the United States. How are we going to deal with the challenges of the 21st century? And when these people go in with agendas to slash and burn and to cut programs and people, it really sends a message that the United States government is going to be destabilized within the next several months, within the Trump presidency. So I'm hoping that the Senate Republicans are really going to live up to their responsibilities and do the type of vetting. And when they go through the review of these portfolios of these individuals, but RFK Jr. in charge of HHS, which has, as we pointed out, National Institute of Health, the CDC. In the Obama administration, I was the Homeland Security Advisor during his first term. We worked very closely with these organizations, dealing with the pandemic, the H1N1 pandemic, other issues. These are serious, serious programs, and that the people there, I think, are just going to be gobsmacked at the prospect that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. could ever, in fact, be their leader.
Yeah. Now let's turn our attention briefly to Tulsi Gabbard. The aforementioned John Brennan had plenty to say about Miss Gabbard.
And as Tom Nichols said, she doesn't have any qualifications. The Director of National Intelligence, that's a really serious position and a very complex and complicated one that requires somebody who actually has an understanding of the intelligence community. It's like an orchestra conductor of all the different agencies and departments that are involved in the intelligence process. And I don't think she understands even the instruments that are involved in this orchestra, nor has she had any experience at the strategic level of running and leading a large, complex organization. And the Director of National Intelligence is, according to legislation, the president's principal intelligence advisor, the person who is responsible for making sure that the president's daily brief is put together in a very sound and forthright manner, the person who puts together the budget and the priorities of the intelligence community. So I know that this appointment is sending shockwaves here in the United States, but also around the globe in terms of, is this really somebody who Donald Trump is going to entrust with the care and the leadership of the intelligence community? An unserious pick for a serious position.
Former UN ambassador and former national security advisor to Donald Trump, John Bolton, offered these comments on the aforementioned Gabbard.
She doesn't have any experience in intelligence matters. She has demonstrated repeatedly that she doesn't understand international affairs. She has been quoted as saying that effectively Putin was justified in having Russia invade Ukraine because there were secret American biological weapons laboratories in Ukraine. I mean, this is Fantasyland stuff. I think the answer here, that the nomination's clearly going to be made. It is customary for every senior nominee of a president to have a full-field FBI background investigation, particularly in sensitive national security and law enforcement matters. Those investigations could begin now in a smooth transition where the incoming president has beginning to announce his senior appointees, Secretary of State, and so on. The outgoing administration can let the FBI loose to do the investigation. And the way the FBI starts its interviews off is, Mr. John Smith is being considered for a senior government job, and I'd like to speak to you about him. That can happen now. Those interviews, including full field investigations for Tulsi Gabbard and Matt Gaetz, could be done basically by January 1.
Bolton went on to call Gabbard, quote, the worst cabinet-level appointment in history, end quote. That is, until he heard about Matt Gaetz being nominated as Attorney General. He then said, quote, now we are going to see whether the American Senate can stand up and reject two people who are totally unqualified, unfit professionally, and really lacking in the moral character you need to hold these jobs. I think these votes should be 100-0 against both of them, end quote. But you see, here's the thing. Donald Trump knows his nominees aren't qualified. He just doesn't care. He's not picking them based on their resumes. He's picking them based only on their loyalty to Donald Trump. And yet, thanks to his right-wing propaganda, fascist hate media, their audience think these choices are wonderful. I've seen them on chats. They truly think these nominees are the cat's meow. Now, we just heard from two people. One I agree with politically, Brennan. The other I don't, Bolton. Two Johns. Or as the younger Melania in a different profession probably called them, two Johns. And they both had the exact same thing to say about Tulsi Gabbard. And I'm sure you'll find it more than comforting when you learn that Trump's choice of Gabbard and Gaetz had Vladimir Putin's approval.
There are no brakes on Trump. So what happens, Director Brennan, to the people that work inside the agencies who are trained in mining the intelligence product for information that helps keep America safe when the person they report to sides with Putin over those very agencies and people inside them?
Well, they need to live up to their oath of office and their professional responsibilities in terms of telling truth to power and making sure that they carry out their intelligence responsibilities to the best of their ability, irrespective of who might be at the top. And the concern that a lot of intelligence professionals have is when individuals will lead these organizations who politicize them. This is something that is very worrisome, I think, to scores of intelligence professionals. I think John Bolton also said that Trump is looking for fealty among these various leaders that he's appointing. He wants individuals who are going to be at his beck and call and do what he wants. And I think one of the most damning notes of Tulsi Gabbard is that Russian television today, the political pundits out there, have been praising her nomination as well as the nomination of Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General. So I think there's shockwaves that are going through the intelligence community right now about this nomination.
Yeah, and before Trump, that would be a career killer. But today, in the era of Trump, and is now pro-Putin, pro-Russia media and base, being celebrated in Russian media, that's now an asset, baby. It makes you wonder how long before USA, USA turns to USSR, USSR. You know, seeing as that's what Putin is trying to resurrect. And you know, one question right off the bat has to be, what does RFK Jr. think about Trump's choice of Matt Gaetz to be his Attorney General? When Bobby Brainworm's uncle, JFK, was president of this country, his father, Bobby Kennedy, was this nation's Attorney General. Anyone want to dare try and contrive some sort of equivalence between those two, Bobby Kennedy and Matt Gaetz? And RFK Jr. began his career as an assistant district attorney in New York. I mean, you would think with all his experience and exposure to the legal world, he'd have at least some problem or internal conflict attaching himself to someone who has shown time and time again has less than zero respect for the rule of law. And for what? To head and potentially destroy an agency for which he has zero qualifications to lead. Now, there's no question RFK has done some noble work in the environmental field, and yet he has no problem hooking up with a guy who likes to chant, "Drill, baby, drill." RFK Jr. is a guy who suggested COVID is a Chinese bioweapon ethnically targeted to attack Caucasians and black people, and to spare Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people. I mean, he has also falsely claimed the U.S. has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on labs in Ukraine to develop similar bioweapons that target people by their race. I mean, it appears more and more that the brain that found its way into RFK Jr.'s brain feasted on the part that controls ethics. Same with Matt Gaetz. And in both cases, that lack of ethics is the primary reason Trump likes them. That is who he feels most comfortable in the company of and who he wants around him. They're his peeps, his contemporaries, his equals, and now his partners in crime. And so we are now faced with the same question and dilemma we wrestled with yesterday, just different people. Will Bobby Brainworms be confirmed? Will Tulsi Gabbard be confirmed? And of course, will Matt Jail Bait Gaetz be confirmed? And you know, apropos of nothing, I began making the case years and years ago, even before social media, that the right, in particular their media, were going more towards the fringe conspiracy theory area than the fringe was moderating and coming more towards the mainstream. And by and large, Republican politicians stayed away from that fringe neighborhood. But I'll never forget, during the 2012 presidential campaign, one of the attacks the right-wing propaganda fascist hate media leveled against Barack Obama was that Obama hadn't called one particular attack a terrorist attack. And I mean, not that it should matter. I mean, it was just another instance of the aforementioned media and their phony scandal manufacturing machine concocting yet another bogus scandal. Why? In order to give their audience their daily hate fix and keep them in a constant state of rage. But the point is that accusation was a lie. Obama did indeed call that attack a terrorist attack, and he said it 2 days after the attack right here in Las Vegas. And I'll never forget, during one of his debates with Obama, Mitt Romney decided he'd pull one out of the fringes of the right-wing media echo chamber. And he chose this one. And he accused Obama of not calling this particular attack a terrorist attack. Well, one of the moderators fact-checked Romney in real time and told him the truth that Obama had indeed called it a terrorist attack. And Mitt Romney just stood there, to borrow a word from John Brennan earlier, gobsmacked. And of course, the right was just furious that their candidate had been fact-checked. Why? Because they had allowed themselves to be brainwashed into believing that Obama hadn't used the proper verbiage for an attack when he actually had done so. But here's the kicker. For the rest of the campaign, Romney never reached into the right's fringe bag again. It was a fleeting moment, however, because after Obama was elected and then reelected, that fringe white privilege movement continued to grow and fester inside the right-wing propaganda fascist hate media for the entire 8 years of the Obama presidency. And when Donald Trump came along, who had earned his fringe bona fides by being one of the leading proponents of the Obama birth certificate conspiracy theory, and his repetition of same, the stage was set for the fringe to move even closer to the mainstream, which it did, in leaps and bounds, the likes of which no one's ever seen before. To the extent Trump is now nominating conspiracy theorists to run important government agencies, the mismanagement of which could result in people dying. But back to Matt Jail Bait Gaetz, and I want to make him our poster child for all of Trump's unqualified nominees. Why? Because of the awesome power of the Department of Justice. I mean, the Attorney General has often been referred to as the nation's top cop. Matt Gaetz would have some say into who's investigated, who's indicted, and who's arrested. By the same agency, by the way, that was investigating him for rape and sex trafficking. And in the course of our probe into Matt Gaetz yesterday, probably not the best choice of words, as I said, my initial reaction was that there was no way he could ever be confirmed. And the people we heard from yesterday more or less confirmed my belief, although I didn't have a lot of confidence in my assessment. Even when a caller asked me what my gut feeling was, and I said my gut was he would not be confirmed, as I said, I didn't have a lot of confidence in that, but that's what my gut said at the time. Now, the clips I'm going to play now, I had them lined up to play yesterday. We just ran out of time. And I knew what was said in them. And yet, I still went with my gut and said I didn't think it could be confirmed. Today, I want you to hear from some other people who don't agree with me. And we're going to start with one of my favorites, Bulwark editor-at-large Tim Miller, who was the first one to make me question my gut.
And Nicole, well, our reactions are aligned as usual. Last night, I felt that way with the Hegseth nomination. So I was like, okay, we don't have to live in this stupid world where people are going to pretend like Donald Trump is going to be nominating serious people or whatever. Yeah. And we can just see the truth.
I should have called you. I should have called you because Jeremy Basham on my show. He's like, the Senate's going to hold the line and he's going to do. And Donnie Deutsch sat here. He's like, looks good. It looks good. I'm like, what? We're in year 9. Like, you could say those things in year 1, but year 9, he always caves to his weakest, most insecure instincts.
Indeed. And the party, Republican Party does, right? And so, I don't have a crystal ball for, which rare moments we'll like see the tiny spine of a handful of 4 Republican senators over the next 4 years. But you're not going to go bankrupt betting against them to show any spine against Donald Trump in the coming years. I certainly don't think they're going to stand up to his cabinet appointments. Who knows? Maybe one of them. It's hard to what exactly would be their rationalization for not appointing somebody like Matt Gaetz or Pete Hegseth after they supported a felon for president? It's like, well, Matt Gaetz had some allegations against him. Well, you supported a felon for president who was indicted in 4 different jurisdictions. Well, Pete Hegseth is unserious. Well, you supported a reality TV host who was a scam artist who had a failed university and failed water company for president. So, there's no rationale for being for Donald Trump for commander-in-chief and not whatever, ridiculous alignment of characters he chooses to be around him and his cabinet. So I find the whole thing, to your point about people's reaction yesterday, I was just, looking online and listening to your previous guests, and it's like the reporters on the Hill saying that John Cornyn is snorting and people at the Pentagon are aghast. And it's like, where were all these people? Obviously, Donald Trump was going to pick his cronies and TV show hosts to run the government. That's what he told us he was going to do. And so, I think that there are some people, the former the establishment of the GOP now is MAGA, but the former establishment of the GOP, the ones who remain, John Thune and all of them, they're in for a rude awakening as these hits are going to keep on coming. And I expect that most of these people, if not all of them, will be confirmed and possibly confirmed by a recess appointment, which would be an unprecedented destruction of norms. But that would just be the latest in a long line of unprecedented norm destructions.
Wow. Next, we hear from the Democratic congressman from California, Eric Swalwell, whose take is a complete 180 from Tim Miller's.
It's not going to happen. I know that's a different take than anyone else's, but it's not going to happen. And so if the president-elect wanted to amuse us today during these dark times, I will give him credit for having a sense of humor, because I didn't think he had a sense of humor, but this shows that he might have a sense of humor. Puff Daddy Diddy may be cheering in his cell for this, but no one else in America is asking for this. And I have more confidence than you probably would think I should have that the Senate is never going to let this see the light of day.
And on Monday, Trump made clear that he'll use the recess appointments. Do you not believe him, or do you not think that Matt Gaetz is eligible for a recess appointment?
I believe that such an unserious appointment like this, by appointing somebody who clearly would abuse the power at the Department of Justice, has to move senators to not allow a recess appointment, because this would just wreak chaos on the American criminal justice system. So again, I don't want people to get too spun up about this. I don't want to ruin how this is going to end. But the spoiler alert is Matt Gaetz is not going to be the Attorney General. I actually, knowing Donald Trump, and I have been on this guy for 8 years, Russia investigation, impeachment. I have my own lawsuit against him. I testified in the Colorado case to keep him off the ballot. This to me feels more like the opening of a negotiation, trying to own the libs. And I just caution all of us, let's not spin ourselves up too much, because this is never going to happen.
The aforementioned Tim Miller was then asked if he shared Congressman Swalwell's confident take.
Spun up because this is exactly what I expected. So I guess we agree on that, but I don't share his confidence. I'm also not sure that if it wasn't Matt Gaetz, that the next pick would be any better. I mean, like the short lists of potential people that he was looking at included the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, who's also been indicted like President Trump. It included a bunch of guests on Steve Bannon's War Room and people that were involved in the last coup attempt. I'm sure Jeffrey Clark might be on the. I don't know why we would expect that if Matt Gaetz got withdrawn because his Republican colleagues hate him, which they do, why the next pick would be any better. I think that with respect to Congressman Swalwell, who I appreciate very much, I'm really more talking about the Republicans on the Hill, who I've been watching their reactions on the internet as you've been doing these interviews. I think that everybody needs to expand the aperture of what they think this is going to look like. I think like the level of clownishness that we are going to see over the next 4 years might be a couple of might be degrees larger or wider than people expect. I just, I think that there's been a lot of folks who thought, okay, he's going to win. He's going to do what he did last time. And you bring in Reince Priebus and Mad Dog Mattis. And that's not what's happening this time. He's bringing in loyalists, and he's going to bring in Fox News hosts, and he's going to bring in people that are also under investigation like him because he doesn't have any respect for the DOJ. And the Congressman Swalwell might be correct that in the end, Matt Gaetz does not get confirmed. But I suspect that he will. And if it's not Matt Gaetz, I suspect it will be someone else who has been aligned with Donald Trump in his efforts to undermine the Constitution in the past.
And so here we are again at the precipice of another Trump debacle and clown show that only has potentially disastrous results for this nation. And Trump doesn't care. And his brain-dead mega cult base doesn't care. As I've said till I'm blue in the face, they care nothing about policy or national security. They are there for the vulgarity, the childish name-calling, hatred of the other, the violence, and revenge. And if it results in this country being burned to the friggin' ground, so be it. It seems they are not intellectually deep enough to project any further than 1 minute into the future. 221-7283 is our call-in number here at the station, folks. If you want to chat in these waning moments of the week before we head into the weekend, that's 702 area code 221-7283. To the phones we head, and we'll start with my longtime nemesis, JD. You're first. Thanks for calling.
Thank you for taking my call. I will start off with agreeing with you that Matt Gaetz is Trump's first unforced heir. There were so many more qualified people. But then I would like to ask you to listen to me on some of the other ones that he's talking about. Bobby Kennedy. The current HHS Secretary, Becerra, is a lawyer and a former member of Congress with no background in that position.
But not a conspiracy theorist.
It is rich for John Brennan, who lied twice in front of Congress, who was one of the 51 liars.
JD, hold on. I let you talk. What do you want me to do? Let you make 10 points and then try and remember all of them? Let's take them one at a time. First of all, I never said this was Trump's first unforced error. They've all been errors, so you didn't quote me correctly. Secondly, I don't care what John Brennan's. I know that John Brennan has been a bogeyman or a boogeyman for you on the right for years. That doesn't mean that he has qualifications. It doesn't mean he's not qualified to speak on Tulsi Gabbard. So don't go into the past and drag up this old crap. You do this all the time, and it's irrelevant to what's happening presently.
He shouldn't even be on TV. Comment.
In your opinion, JD, I just said, I know he's been the right's boogeyman for years. I don't care. I don't base this show on the lies your media force feeds into your head and you choose to believe. And as I said, even if everything they said about John Brennan is true, what did he say about Tulsi Gabbard that wasn't true?
Well, first of all, she was a lieutenant colonel in the Army with a top secret clearance on intel.
Wow, and how does that qualify her?
I don't know, but it might qualify her better than Brennan.
Hold it. You said she had top clearance?
In regard to Gaetz.
Hold it. You said she had top clearance as a lieutenant colonel? I don't see that being a reality. Are privates given top clearance too?
In regard to Gaetz, Obama holders wingman.
No, JD, stop. JD, please. I beg of you. I beseech you. Stop dredging up crap from the past that has no relevance now. Talk to what's happening today. If the best you can do is, so-and-so did this. I mean, it's the old lame whataboutism.
Let me ask you a question. Who was Jim Miller?
Jim Miller? I don't know.
Yeah, the guy that was being interviewed by your girlfriend.
The guy that was being... Oh, Tim Miller.
Tim Miller, yeah. Well, who is he?
Tim Miller's a lifelong Republican strategist.
Never heard of him.
Of course you don't. You think that Fox or OANN or Newsmax or RSBN are going to play sound bites like that?
Again, I congratulate you for digging up retards.
For digging up what?
Party. I'll let you take other calls. I'll talk to you later. Take care.
Okay. I have no idea how that conversation ended or what he said. But again, folks, this lame whataboutism. Well, look what Bill Clinton did. Who cares? It's past, and it has no relevance or bearing on what Trump is doing now, namely dismantling the American government. I don't get it. And how you can placate yourself with that kind of lame, again, whataboutism is beyond me. I mean, if that was the best I could do to stop myself from seeing the dangerous reality we now face by digging into the past and saying, well, so-and-so said this 16 years ago, I don't think I'd convince myself. But then that's me. 221-7283 is our caller number. Big Bad John, you're next. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Doug, can you hear me?
I can.
Piss off, JD. That was pathetic. You added nothing to the conversation. If I was you, I would be writing my apology to my children and my grandchildren how I destroyed America for them, how I ruined it and turned it over to a fascist. So when you're dead and gone, they can look back and say, at least Grandpa apologized for his misdeeds. Look, Dick Durbin, wow, he's a powerful guy, huh, Doug? That's Dick Durbin. He just brings the pipe, the lead pipe, man. He just set everybody straight. This is what I'm talking about. Democrats are weak and feckless. Where was Nancy Pelosi yesterday? Hey, Nancy, you suck at your job. Where was Chuck Schumer yesterday? Hey,
John, just one quick thing. John, just one quick thing real quick. We have to stop banging on Nancy Pelosi. It's now Hakeem Jeffries that has her job.
Yeah, but she's in charge. She's the one who got Biden to step aside. She still runs the show. There's no question about it. They're weak and they're feckless, and they need to go. And over the weekend, I'm going to research how you can drop out of being a Democrat, because I would encourage all of your Democrat listeners to withdraw from the party, register as independent. That's the only way there's going to be change. You need to do that. And, you know, to Sarah, the caller who followed me yesterday, she proved my point. She said that she's tied into the Texas Democrats, and they're just gonna let it happen, let it play out, let the Republicans make mistakes. In my opinion, did you ever see the movie Pulp Fiction?
Of course.
you remember when Marcellus got taken down into the basement and some very terrible things were about to happen to him? Sarah, that's about to happen to America. And your response, you weak and feckless Democratic response is, oh, let's just let them overreach, and then we'll react after that. How pathetic do you have to be? American democracy is getting flooded. Matt Gaetz is the nominee for Attorney General. Are you kidding me? This clown has put America in the gutter, and Nancy Pelosi is MIA. Chuck Schumer is MIA, and they send out old, tired Dick Durbin who can barely complete a sentence. Where the hell are the fighters in the Democratic Party? And if you're a Democrat on Monday, tune in, boys and girls, because I'll tell you how to switch parties or become a registered independent.
I hear you, John. You have a good week. You have a good weekend, sir. I appreciate you. 221-7283 is the number. Area code 702. Lance, you are next. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, I enjoyed your monologue to open up the show, and I don't listen very often, but I guess you don't like the selections by Trump. Just a quick question on that. Should he leave the people there that's in place now, currently?
I don't see any reason why he couldn't. Some people get held over, like James Comey was held over.
You're saying how bad the selections are he's making. So I can't remember the name.
Let me ask you, Lance, do you disagree? Are you pleased with these choices?
I'm pleased with several of them, not all of them. I don't think that.
Who do you like? Who don't you like?
The right guy for that. But so my point was that Kennedy is replacing. Now, what's the name? It's a guy or it's a girl. The one that currently has that job. That's about 250 pounds, in charge of health. What's her name?
And Rachel.
Yeah, so she's out.
Rachel Levine.
She'll be out.
Are you saying?
You think Rachel Levine is better than Kennedy?
Hold on. I think anybody would be better than Trump's nominees. The fact that you choose to disparage a transgender person and their weight shows me the depth of your substance. You're not thinking about qualifications, which she has. You're thinking about her weight and her gender. That shows me where you're at. You're not a serious person who's interested in policy. You want to throw rocks at someone's gender dysphoria and their weight.
What was the name? I don't want to talk over you, so I'll let you say it. So what was the name of the person? Shaved head, wore red lipstick, got caught stealing luggage. Another Biden appointee. So the one that Trump's putting in place, probably not as good as that one, you're saying?
Of course not.
Okay.
Of course not. That person to whom you are referring was not placed in that position to be a toady to Joe Biden. That person was placed in that position based on what their qualifications were, not what they looked like. And I agree with you. He looked pretty strange. No argument there. The bottom line is an appointment like that, irrespective of their appearance, is better than putting someone there whose only qualification is being loyal to dear leader Trump.
So the qualifications for that person to be in that role were better
You're like a dog with a bone. You're not going to let this go, are you? I just tried to steer you into reality and logic and intelligence, and you're going to stick with this crap.
Let me just ask the last question. It's a trifecta.
We got 20 seconds, so make it a quickie.
What was his qualifications? Buttigieg to be head of transportation?
Goodbye, sir. You're an idiot, and it's been a pleasure. Seriously, folks, I got to run. We're out of time. I appreciate you listening, calling, watching. We'll do this all over again on Monday, hopefully with you. Until then, take care.
All Chicagoans and all food lovers, check out Chicago's Best.